Today we're going to be making an abstracted figure in the style of Barbara Hepworth and Henry Moore. So you're going to start by drawing a figure onto paper. You just want this to be a basic stick figure, but you want to make sure that you leave some dynamic space within it. So think of the negative space as you're drawing it, because that's what's going to create sort of the abstraction interest within your sculpture. After you've drawn it out, you're going to create the bubble around it. Think of it like writing bubble letters. You want a kind of thick bubble around it that will help further abstract the form and make it seem sort of an odd organic shape. Then you're going to want to cut it out. This is going to be the template that you're going to be using on your clay. So you want to make sure that when you cut it out, you cut it as carefully as possible, keeping in mind that this is a very rough estimate of what your sculpture is going to look like. Don't forget to cut out any gaps inside the template. You want as much detail as possible to be accurate for when you're going to be using this on your clay. The next thing we're going to have to do is going to have to be wedge and prepare your clay. Now with this technique, we're going to be doing a slab carving, a slab clay building technique. So not only do you have to make sure that you wedge your clay, but you need to work on flattening it out so that it can become the slab that you need. It's important to keep in mind the size of your template because that's roughly the size of the sculpture that you're going to be making. And the paper I drew my template on was A4, which means my final sculpture is going to be a little bit smaller than an A4 size piece of paper. So as I'm wedging at the clay, I'm using two methods. I'm both throwing it down against the table, but I am also making sure that I am pressing it in with the heel of my hands. And then as I need to attach sections, I'm using a score and slipping technique so that I can attach the different sections of clay together to make the larger piece I'm going to need. I'm going to use a rolling pin to roll it flat and smooth. You want a nice consistent thickness across it, and you don't want it much thicker than a centimeter thick. All right, centimeter, for those of you who forget, is roughly the roughly the width of your fingernail. So once I create it, I want to try to smooth it on both sides, make sure there's no cracks, because cracks will cause problems in the drying process. Once it's all rolled out, you need to make sure that your template fits, and if it doesn't, you're going to have to add extra clay, as I have to do here when I didn't accommodate for the foot section sticking out in my template. So once again, I'm going to score, and then I'm going to slip, and then I'm sticking them together. So always go score, slip, stick. Once it is smooth and consistent to where I need it to be, then I'm going to be able to start actually forming this into something that resembles the sculpture I'm intending. Now I want to trace my template out onto my slab. So I'm going to place my template down. I'm going to use a tool to carve along. I'm not worried about going right through the clay at this point. I just want to draw the template on to the clay. After I've done that, I can cut off the excess. Now don't get rid of that excess. You're going to need that to help make sure that your sculpture can be freestanding and support the weight. So just keep it to the side. You will be using a great deal of those pieces again. Now I want to work on building it up so it can be freestanding. Remember that you need to keep in mind that your sculpture should be able to be seen in the round. That means you need to see it from all four directions. So as you're building it up, not only does it need to be able to stand up still, but it also needs to be dynamic and interesting from every angle and perspective. So I'm starting with building a bit of a flared base at the bottom and extending it outwards to make sure that that can support the weight and that it doesn't fall over. I keep using a score, slip, and stick technique to add these different sections on. And then I'm going to be smoothing and ensuring that this sculpture is exactly how I want to look. The shape is accurate to my intention. It's dynamic, it's interesting, and it looks well made, no rough, odd spots. Now, as I'm working, I'm using a blend of tools and my fingers to ensure that I can get the sculpture smooth and strong. You can see here that I've pulled out one of the ribs to use as well. And now I'm using a loop to cut off some of the excess that's built up in different areas that I don't like. The loop is really good at cutting off sections of clay and smoothing things. You can see I'm using it on the edges to soften and round the edges because obviously when I cut it off the table it was very blunt and I wanted to make sure it's more smooth and softer to reinforce the organic form. Now I've put my sculpture on a wheel at this point so that I can easily turn it around as I work. This ensures that I can see it from every angle as I work and make sure it all meets my expectations.